All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson Mackay.
In a world chasing hacks and highlight reels, there's one man who's never left the land. Sean Hanna, better known as Sean the Sheepman. He's built more than a following, he's building a legacy. This isn't just about sheepdogs, it's about leadership, loss, loyalty, and what it means to live with a purpose. This one's real, raw, and deeply human. We're not just spotlighting a shepherd, we're spotlighting a philosopher in work boots. He's a man who turned a field full of sheep into a global audience. You might know him as Sean the Sheepman, the straight-talking farmer, whose videos have racked up millions of views and brought the world of farming to our screens in a way we've never seen before. From the highs and lows of working the land to the unexpected comedy of life with sheep, Sean's stories are about as real as the mud on his boots. In this episode, we dive into the realities behind the reels, the grit, the graft, and the moments that make it all worthwhile. Whether you're here for the laughs, the lessons, or a just good old-fashioned yarn, you're going to enjoy this one. Now let's get into it. Here's Sean the Sheepman. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been a fan of yours for ages now. But when you introduce yourself as Sean the Sheepman, how do you describe who you are and what you do?
I would just say that I'm a almost everyday normal sort of guy who's a shepherd, and um, yeah, shepherding's just obviously a form of farming, but um, it's a really old sort of vocation, and uh, it's a really fun way of living most of the time. Can also be really stressful, but shepherding's definitely just a nice way of living, I think.
And do you think you were always predestined to go into this kind of life? You know, can you think how you, like, what was the story that brought you into crofting, farming, working with collies, etc.?
I think it's a bit of a unusual story. I grew up in a town, so I grew up in Stranraer, which is in the southwest of Scotland. Um, I was really dyslexic at school, so I sort of struggled, but I did okay. But I didn't really want to go into any further education, and I just always really had a passion for animals. And it was actually my mum who suggested, "Well, why don't you get a job in a local farm and see what happens?" So I started dairy farming for a while, and I did that for a while, and then I took a break and worked with my cousin in his fencing company. I went back to dairy farming for 8 months and decided actually I wanted to work with sheep and dogs, and yeah, I got a job in just at the side of Loch Lomond, um, with a father and son, and they basically trained me up working with dogs, and I've never really stopped. I think working with dogs was a big draw to coming to shepherding, and I've just always really had a sort of passion for dogs and really liked working with dogs. And it was definitely a struggle at first because it's a totally different type of dog training, but once I got the hang of it, it was just something I really enjoyed.
I love that. I love that you went your own path. You didn't just follow what, society, education tells us, because when you're younger, we are told just go to college, go to university, but they don't tell you what you're going to do after or how you're going to live your life. And you followed your own path, you followed your own right of way. Can you remember what your first experience working with a dog when this living, breathing thing was following your every command? What was it like, that
Yeah.
power?
Um, it was a sort of strange experience because actually the first dog I worked wasn't one of mine. It was the guy I was working with. I'm friends with him now. He had a dog called Ted, and Ted was a bit of a funny dog, and he just wouldn't work for this guy. And he sort of wanted to know if it was the dog or if it was him. And he says, "Right, take that dog to the field and see what you can do." And he just started working straight away. And he was supposed to be fully trained when this fellow bought him, but for whatever reason, he took a disliking to him, I suppose. And he
As
worked
they
fine
do.
for me for a while.
Uh,
And yeah, he was a really fun dog, really hard headed though. Probably not quite right for somebody who is maybe not so confident, not so experienced. But yeah, I had fun with him for a few hours, and then gave him back and said, "Oh, the dog's working. It's just it must be uh, just something that it doesn't like." So uh,
Do you think that's the
yeah.
case, that there isn't such a thing as a bad dog? It's a bad owner, it's a bad leader. The dog's just doing what it's been trained or shown as acceptable.
Well, the thing with that was he's a really good dog trainer and he's worked with a lot of dogs. And he sort of put it down to the night he brought that dog home, there was a lightning storm while the dog was in the back of the car, and the first face it saw when it come out of the car in that lightning storm was him, and it somehow associated him with that lightning storm. But
Hmm.
collies can be really funny dogs, and you'll find that collies really only want to work for one person. And if you've been training a dog and somebody else tries to work it, it can very quickly take a disliking to that person. Or um, yeah, collies can just be funny in general, and they really pick who they want to work for, if that makes sense. And at the same time, what might be the right dog for one person might not be the right dog for the next, because one dog will work better with his style of handling, and one dog would work better with another person's style of handling. So yeah, it's sometimes it can be the dog, the handler, the way the handlers try to work the dog, or just simply that dog doesn't work well with that type of handling.
And do you notice that with dogs, though, that they all have their own personality, they all have their own instincts and that? Because when I grew up with some border collies, but they were pets, and even they would try to round up the cat, or they would do, you could see that natural herding in them. But what's the difference, do you find, between a pet dog, because you have your own pets, versus a working dog, for somebody who's maybe never experienced a working breed of a dog?
I think there's quite a few differences. I mean, if you just talk about it in the general sense, I find pet dogs tend to warm up to people a lot quicker than a working dog will. Working dogs have a sort of natural suspicion. And I think that's just from working stock. They want to figure somebody out before they really interact with them. So they do tend to be, I think, maybe a bit more pushy and a bit more nippy with people. But also they tend to be, I find, just because of the lifestyle that they have and the more freedom that they have, they tend to be a little more self-minded, a little more self-aware. They don't really rely on people for interaction. They're getting
Mm.
so much interaction out of their work that that's really what they want to do all the time. So a stranger could come in and talk to the dog, and the dog just ignores them and says, "I don't really want to associate with you. I just want to go out to work with my person." And uh, yeah, so there's definitely that side of them. But then I also find that when you build a bond with a working dog, it's extremely strong and it's different from a pet dog. Your pet dog is sort of, you rely on them for, a lot of people would say, unconditional love, but that sort of companionship.
Mm.
Whereas a working dog, it's a totally different relationship. It's almost like you rely on them to do what you do every day, and they rely on you to go and do what they want to do every day. So you get this sort of very strange relationship where your lives are almost entwined, where you both are relying on each other heavily just to get through your day to day life. If that makes sense.
No, I love that. It's a really interesting way of looking at it because I think we all have pets and we all think, but not a lot of people know what craft work. And I mean, like we were discussing before we started, I only got a wee introduction to it. You know, we had some sheep, we had some lambing and stuff, but we don't see it day to day. And a lot of people who comment have never seen that style of, you know, like crofting, farming, etc. Do you think that's why you've gone viral? That you're out there every day, you're showcasing the skill, the companionship with the dogs, the crofting, but you're also showing them where their food comes from. You're showing them that part of the world that they haven't seen before. Do you think?
Yeah, I think shepherding's definitely, it was a something that's almost sort of dying out in a way. Um, there's fewer and fewer shepherds, and so little people actually get to see what we do, and especially with the dogs, herd, and sheep. And I find I have a lot of followers that are from America as well, and they just don't see this kind of stuff at all. And even people here in the UK, where we do have a good number of sheep, especially inner city people, have never seen a dog herd sheep before, and I think it's just a unique thing that sort of draws people in, and a lot of people like dogs, which obviously helps. But yeah, they don't see dogs in the way that I see them every day, and see them in such a critical role, and I think that definitely draws people in, and so does the sort of oddities of having a working relationship with a dog rather than the standard sort of pet relationship that everybody sort of knows so well.
So you were saying, you know, you were working hard on the craft every day because it can be backbreaking in the pouring rain, the pissing wind, as we like to say. You have, you know, you've got the family, you've got the kids, and you know you're doing all this amazing stuff, and then you decided, I'm the fed up of just working hundreds of sheep. I'm now going to bring a camera out there as well. What on earth drove you to start a channel in the middle of all this?
It sort of all started on TikTok, and it was, I suppose, that sort of stereotypical thing where my wife was sort of wanting me to watch TikTok videos, and I was like, TikTok's for kids, and and then one day I sort of watched a few videos, and I was like, oh, this is actually quite cool. And it was the middle of COVID, and nobody was really seeing anybody, and I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to make a couple of videos. I'm going to put them on just almost for a laugh. And then they got a really good reaction, so I just kept going, and eventually I built that into YouTube. And yeah, it really all stemmed from people seem to have a really good reaction to it, and people it seemed to make a lot of people feel good. And um, yeah, because of that, I just wanted to make more and more. And I guess it sort of just came out of being bored in COVID and having a little bit of fun. And it's almost how I've tried to keep the channel more about me enjoying the videos that I make, and sort of
Hmm.
enjoying sharing this side of life with people, and sharing, enjoying other people having a good experience to it was what really drove me to make it into a more sort of almost professional channel, and into YouTube and into Facebook after that.
Because it's certainly blown up. You know, you get comments from all over the world, and people are actually as much enamored by the dogs as and you, and you can see your sort of evolution in it. How much you've come out your shell, and how much you enjoy it, and how more kind of taking part in the videos, and like your editing skills, like you're getting really good at it. But how
Yeah,
much of that do you think is like you putting into it? Are you like looking to expand it into a brand, or is this always going to be just like this bit of fun that you do on the side?
I think I have started sort of expanding into a brand now. Um, Especially with the YouTube, I'm trying really hard with the YouTube right now. I've sort of been focusing on it. Um, Part of it still is just enjoying what I'm making, because I think that's fans sort of see that, and if you're not enjoying what you're doing, uh, they're going to see that, and it's not going to be as popular. But yeah, I think I am trying to expand it into a brand. Work for somebody here, so um, sometimes I am a little bit limited on what I can do, but uh, yeah, definitely taking it forward. I'd like to start my own farming business one day and bring people through that experience. And with the editing and stuff, I'd say a lot of it's just practice. I mean, if you start doing this and you're doing it all the time, you get better and better. I mean, sometimes when I first started, sometimes just making a simple 1 minute TikTok, I would have like 30 or 40 goes at it, and I'd be nervous doing it, and I'd
Hmm.
stutter in videos. And the more I got in front of the camera, and the more I got used to it, and the more I got practiced with editing, just the better everything got sort of naturally. So, um, yeah, I guess I'll probably will try and make it more and more into a sort of niche brand, but at the same time, I think just having fun with it is also a key part of uh, other people enjoying it, but also me enjoying what I'm doing as well.
No, it's some great points because I mean that's the thing I think people forget is they expect to be good quickly, and a lot of times it takes your first couple hundred videos before you even get close to a decent video. I mean, I've done over 200 of these, and I still panic before every interview. I still think I said that was stupid, shouldn't have done that. And fear is always going to be there. You just have to name it and get on with it. And I think that comes perfectly down to like the dogs as well. They sense fear, so they try to take over if they think you're not leading the pack, if you don't know what you're doing. What has it taught you about leadership, being in charge of the dogs, especially when you got three of them in the go and hundreds of sheep, when you need to take control? What have you learned about you as a leader at that point?
I think when I first started shepherding, working with dogs, my biggest problem was a lack of confidence in myself, and that really makes it hard to control a dog in a working sense because it's not like a dog on a lead where if something goes wrong, you can just hold on. Um, so confidence is probably one of the biggest things that I sort of say to people what are asking for advice. You've got to say something like you already know it's going to happen. Whereas
Mm.
a lot of people they give the dog a command like it's a question. So yeah, for me, confidence was the biggest thing I struggled with. And my first dog, Haig, he was a really headstrong male dog who was two when I bought him. And yeah, if you wavered at all, he would just start doing his own thing. Like
Mm.
if he thought that you weren't meaning what you were saying, he would just start doing his own thing, and he'd be super hard to control. And I found just as I got more and more work and did more and more stuff with him, uh, and I started to be able to control him a bit better, my confidence would grow, and then my control over him would grow, and yeah, it would just go like that, and to the point where I've got the three dogs I've got there now. Um, it's it's sort of funny to explain, but you've almost got to sort of let the dogs put you in the leadership role. You won't really rule a dog with fear, and you won't bribe a border collie into doing what it's told. You
Mm.
sort of got to be a leader for them to put you in the lead position. So it's sort of got to come naturally. But the biggest part of that is just you being confident in what you're saying. Even if you're wrong, be confident while you're being wrong, and the dog will still listen to you. And then if you do lose control of the sheep, it's just key not to panic and just try and fix it best you can while keeping your composure, staying confident, and staying calm.
So, what do you think then is the balance? Because you probably get this question a lot. What's the balance between instinct and training? Because everybody assumes it's the training the dog has, but you can see the natural herding in a dog, like a border collie from a puppy onwards. What do you think the balance between the two are, and how do you let the dog's natural instincts come out as much as what you've trained them to do?
I would say it's 50-50. A dog has got to have natural instinct in order for it to be trained. and a dog can't really herd effectively without training, even if it has the best instincts in the world. So, um, yeah, it's definitely 50-50. When a dog's, well, what raw herding instinct is really is just the dog's sort of will to want to chase those sheep and keep them together. There's no real direction in it. Direction kind of comes from training. And you can even do this in a sort of almost subconscious way where if you help the dog along, the dog will eventually learn to push the sheep away from you or bring the sheep towards you. But if you really want to put commands on, put direction on the dog, then you're going to have to work with it a lot. And there's lots of different ways you could train a dog, and you'll see a lot of trial people using round pens and really pushing dogs on quickly. Sort of do a more natural method where I'll let a puppy come out with an older dog for sometimes 8 months, sometimes it could be 14 months before I actually take them for like one-on-one training sessions and let those instincts develop and just watch the pup and see what's developing in it and what's coming on naturally. And once I get to a point where I sort of think, okay, so the dog's doing this naturally, the dog's doing that naturally. Now I'm gonna start putting in directions. I'm gonna start putting in commands. I'm gonna start sort of teaching that dog how to pace itself and how to herd in a way that's going to be uh, both safe for it and the sheep. And yeah, so it's sort of they're almost hand in hand. Like if you see a dog maybe in that first 6 months which is rushing up too fast, maybe you will want to slow it down a bit. But normally when you take them out with an older dog, you actually notice they watch the older dog more than they watch the sheep, and they're learning from them. But then
Hmm.
that'll draw out that instincts and it'll draw out a lot of those natural things that are there. But then actually putting commands in, they'll only learn that really from one-on-one lessons and um, basically very repetitive styles of training where you're building up an association with a word and what that dog naturally wants to do.
Can you go into a little bit about how you train the dogs? Because I mean, a lot of people listening probably will have pet dogs, but they could get a lot from the kind of skill, the obedience, the command structure, that our working dogs are taught. How do you bring that out of them, but to do it in a way that you want it done productively?
I think when I start off with a puppy, the most important thing for me is that I've got control of the puppy before I sort of take it out to sheep. So I start off with just your average everyday obedience training, sit, lie down, and then a recall. And I'll do that from when you get the puppy or when the puppy's 8 weeks old. I'll every day, just a couple of minutes, do some lie down and then recall because those really are your two most important commands. Because lie down is stop, your recall is come back to me. Once you've got them two, everything else will fall into place. So I'll start off with just simple obedience training, just like anybody else would with treats. Teach the dog to lie down, teach the dog to come back. And then once they've got that, probably about 14 weeks, I'll just start taking the dog out and I'll get it used to livestock. So I'll sit it on the quad with me, maybe for about 10 minutes a day, the end of my morning rounds or something. Take it out to see sheep, make sure it's getting used to everything on the farm.
Hmm.
And then slowly I'll just start putting that dog on the ground for maybe 30 seconds the first day and a minute a couple of weeks later and build it up to when that dog is sort of basically just shadowing the other older dogs. And this really depends on the dog. When the dog's ready, that's when I'll take it to a training field. I've got my own little herd of, I've got 8 Hebrideans now, but they're quite a flighty sheep that's going to run around a lot. Uh, doesn't really take much for a dog to move them. They're brilliant for dogs' confidence because they'll just run. Um, take them out, and when the dog starts moving left, I'll start shouting, come by. When the dog starts moving right, I'll start shouting away and just building up associations like that. So it's actually the dog that takes the lead for the first bit because the sheep start running that way, so the dog starts going left naturally. and then I'll start adding my commands to it as it's already moving, and then eventually I'll look to move to a point where I'll say the command and the dog will move. So it's really just about building up the association with what you want to happen, um, through a almost sort of reverse training. So because it sort of starts off with the dog naturally doing it, and then me adding the command in. The other thing, which is totally different from most other types of dog training, is we talk about in sheepdogs the will to work.
Mm-hmm.
So in most dogs, most types of dog training, the dog is doing something for a reward. So the dog sits down or it does whatever it's going to do because it wants to get the treat at the end. What we have in sort of herding, and there's a few other types of dog training, but it's definitely rarer. It's what we call a self-rewarding activity. So the reward is actually the herding itself. The dog wants to go herd. It's not doing it to get something after the fact. It's doing it because it wants to do it, and we can sort of use that to help train the dog as well. So if the dog starts doing things too fast, if it starts going into a pace which is unhealthy for the sheep, we can stop the dog, bring it back to us, and make it wait, because all that dog wants to do, it wants to go back out and herd those sheep. So through that conversation, it kind of gets the idea, okay, if I start going too fast, he's going to stop me, he's going to bring me back, and I'm going to have to sit and wait. So next time, I'll be a little bit slower. So it's this sort of weird situation where we don't need rewards because the herding is the reward, but we can also use the herding as a way to sort of almost an understanding between the dog that the dog is only going to get that work if it does it the way I want it to work, if that makes sense.
I love that. That's a really smart way of doing it, and it makes a lot of sense. And it probably a lot of people are probably going, "Ah, that explains why my dog does that instead of that." And no, I love how you work with the dog. So, how much is when you're looking at the dynamics of your pack? Because you've got different dogs, and you've got a video where you explain how, like maybe Echo does this particular type of work, where Storm might do this particular work. Like because they've got a stronger push than open fields, for example. How do you look at the different energies and control that different ages, style, even soul of a dog?
Yeah, so it's like you said in the beginning, every dog's a bit different, and some dogs will come to certain aspects of herding a lot better than they will others. And you actually see this a lot. So you hear a lot of people talking about driving dogs and heading dogs. So a driving dog is sort of like the engine of the car that keeps them moving forward. A heading dog is like the steering, and then you get dogs which sort of come to both naturally. Um, but yeah, so each dog will have its own skill set. So when we're talking about maybe Storm's a really good open field dog. She's really good at sort of heading sheep, like steering them around, finding those right places to pinpoint to move the herd in a certain direction. But she's not really that strong of a dog, so she doesn't really drive sheep that well. She doesn't get up behind them and push them on so
Hmm.
fast. If I only took Storm out every day and we were driving sheep in long distance, it would take hours because she would happily just stay behind them at a snail's pace and not really want to push them on. She's not really that sort of strong headed like that. She's more into steering them. Whereas Kate, who's actually her mother, is one of the pushiest dogs you've ever seen. She will run sheep up a race with like 2 inches of space between her and the sheep. She'll get right up behind them. She wants those sheep to move faster so she can move faster. But then in open field, she's probably a bit messy. Sometimes she can be working maybe a bit too fast, a bit too close to the sheep, where instead of turning nice and slowly, they really take a really dramatic turn and really move fast with her. And it can sort of, in some situations, that can be good, but in some situations, maybe you want a bit more of a fine point, if that makes sense. And then Echo, he sort of sits in between the both, where he can do both well, but he's maybe not as good as the others at the aspects that they're good at. if that makes sense. But
So he's a good all rounder. Yeah, about like me probably.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. So certainly he's a good all rounder, but if you were to see him and Storm in open field, Storm always pretty much takes that lead dog position until it comes to driving sheep, and then he'll step in, and you'll see the opposite with Kate, where he'll maybe do a bit more of the sort of turning and fine stuff, and when Kate comes in to drive the sheep, Echo will drop back and do normal male dog things like sniff around in the grass and maybe not pay as much attention because he knows Kate's got the job done.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
I love that because there's videos of you actually explaining that and showcasing the different styles. And even when they're on the back of the quad, you can see the different personalities coming out of them. How, can you ever change the dog? Is it, can you make them drive a bit harder? Can you make them want to go a bit slower? Or is it really you just have to balance the dog for the task?
You can to a degree. It sort of depends on what the issue is. So if it's a confidence issue, you can get past that with like maybe training with some lighter sheep that are going to move a lot easier and bring the dog's confidence up. But a lot of the time, it's just something that's in the dog. If you want a really pushy dog, then you're going to have to find a dog which has that in it, which has that natural sort of confidence and want to move those sheep faster. Um, so it can kind of be a bit of both. You can sometimes, if it's maybe a handling issue or if it's a training issue, you can sort of bring that dog on from it and pull out a bit more, if that makes sense. So another thing going back to training is a lot of the time we aren't really training a lot of things, we're fine tuning instincts. So in that sense, you could fine tune a dog's driving instinct a bit more, but if that dog just doesn't have that driving instinct in it, then you're not really going to be able to pull much more out of it.
It's very true. I mean, I've got a male. Well, he's a Heinz 47 at the minute. We have no idea what kind of breed he is because he was a stray. His mum was a stray from Bulgaria, so he's got a bit of collie, a bit of this, a bit of that. We have no idea. It seems to be just a very weird mix. And if he doesn't want to do something, forget about it. And I love how you
Yeah,
understand your dogs. You seem to just know them and bond with them so that you both get what you want from it. Is that the biggest assumption that people have, is that you make the dogs work, whereas they're actually born and bred and they love it, they crave it?
I think that probably is the biggest misconception in around working dogs is that they're made to work. Um, these dogs really want to work. They love work. Uh, the hardest thing about them is actually try to stop them from being in work mode all the time.
Mm.
But yeah, a lot of people have this idea that we make them work, that we somehow condition them to work. And the biggest thing I tell people is there's no point in training a dog that doesn't want to work because it's never going to be as good as a dog which loves work. So, in my opinion, working dogs, they need that will to work in order to be trained. There's no point in training a dog that doesn't want to be there because it's never going to work at the same level as a dog which does, and you're just going to have training problems after training problems because that dog's not really going to be interested. The only way you would get that to happen is if you had some sort of treat system where you're constantly giving the dog treats, but in a herding situation that doesn't really work because if we were out in the hill, the dog could be 100 meters away, and there's no way you're going to convince a dog that's 100 meters away for you to do what it's told if it doesn't want to do it in the first place. So
Hmm.
yeah,
We had
it just doesn't make sense.
we had a young collie that we kind of did a wee bit of working with her at the same time. Like she was more of a pet, and we had some sheep, so we kind of moved her, and we taught her walk on. So she would go forward a few steps, and we go, "Oh, well done," like congratulate. And she got to a point where she would go literally 10 steps, and then look back for her praise to say, "I did it."
Yeah,
And it was that moment of like, shite, we've taught her that association. And I think that's the thing
yeah,
is you've got that great video with Kate where she's literally shaking. She's desperate to go. She's running up the road and she runs back to you to say, come on, I want it, and you can see the love of work that she has. And it gets so irritating when people say, "Oh, it's disgusting that you take them out in the cold and that." They would spend days and walk the ends of the earth with you. And but how do you
yeah.
keep them mentally and physically stimulated when they're not getting the work or there isn't that work to do?
It's difficult. So, like you pointed out, Kate running up the road, that can also become a problem sometimes because sometimes, say, I'll walk out the front of the house to get something, I'll turn around, Kate will be up the road at the farm waiting, and think, "How did you get up there?" But yeah, definitely, there's not a lot you can do when you've got a working dog. You have to take them to work, but certainly, if you're looking for other ways to sort of stimulate that, there are other ways you can do it, but it requires a lot of effort, and you're gonna be doing a lot of exercise, unfortunately, and
Something a
a
lot of
lot of sort of brain games with your collie and a lot of stuff, uh, because it is such a big part of their lives. It does become their lives in a way. Um, there's a guy in Ireland who kind of equates sometimes being addicts, which they are. They're herding addicts, um, and it's sort of it is what they want to do all the time. So if you were to take them away from that, I just think they would be miserable.
So how do you build that bond with your dog? Because you're with an animal that has deep feelings. You can see that they're constantly looking to you, try to understand your body language, what you're saying, looking, trying to please you the best they can. But you're also it's like a friendship with an animal that can't respond to you by like verbally. So how do you build that bond, and what's it taught you about just how we can connect better with one another? Because you've managed to have three dogs that adore you. Where do you see people going wrong when they're trying to build that trust with their dog?
I think there's definitely one of the biggest parts of it. There's a sort of old saying that a shepherd goes nowhere without his dog. Um, so one of the first big things is that as a shepherd, you almost spend all your time with your dog. They're the one thing that's constantly there. You go to work, you've got your dog with you. You come home, you've got your dog with you. So you do build up a really good understanding of each other. You spend a lot of time with each other, and yeah, another part of it is just being able to read your dog, making sure that you're spending your time uh, looking at not looking at your dog, but actually trying to understand it. I think the biggest one of the biggest places people go wrong is, especially in modern times, is they see their dog as a human and they try and sort of apply human psychology to a dog. Uh, I think the best thing anybody could do is understand their dog as a dog, because it's when you start thinking about your dog as a dog, you really start to understand why they do certain things. So when people are having problems with their dog, behavioral issues, and they try and apply human logic to that, you're never really going to fix it. You really have to try and understand why your dog is doing it as a dog, and try and understand uh, what your dog's point of view on the world is, rather than try to see it through our own eyes. because dogs are just
Mhm.
completely different animals, and a lot of people also overanalyze dogs' body language. So a lot of people think when a dog wags its tail, it's happy. Now that is true some of the time, but it's not always true. So the wagging of the tail comes from adrenaline. So a dog can be wagging its tail and bite somebody. So really, sometimes people get stuck in the idea that this all always must mean this, rather than trying to understand why that certain dog might be doing that in that moment. So a dog can wag its tail and be scared. You just have to try and understand why each dog does what it does. So Storm, who is the sort of middle of my border collies, she is super high energy all the time. She is just an absolute. She's almost nuclear. She's always on. She's always sort of switched on and going for it. So I would sort of read her differently from Echo, who is really chill a lot of the time. He's actually very lackadaisical. So with Echo, you could, if Echo doesn't like somebody, you'll see it straight away because his body language will change. Whereas Storm is so energetic all the time that she can be a lot more unpredictable if you don't know her well, because she can seem happy and then have a bad reaction to something. So I think the biggest thing for people is just to, or where people go wrong, is trying to apply sort of generalizations to their dogs and trying to think about their dogs in a human way instead of really trying to understand their own dog.
It's a very good point. So you're not going to be carrying Storm around in a handbag like Paris Hilton or any of these influencers anytime soon, I take it?
No, she's a funny one. She does like people to a certain degree. She just gets overexcited with them.
Hmm.
So she's not really a dog for taking out in public because she might climb somebody like a tree. She also when she gets overexcited likes to nip fingers and heels, which I personally don't mind. Like when I'm playing with her in the garden and stuff, she will nip at my ears and nose. It doesn't hurt. It's almost her sort of way of showing affection.
No.
But certainly, when if it happens to a stranger, people can be quite sort of jarred by it, I suppose. Whereas you get the likes of Kate, who almost sort of acts shy to get attention. She knows exactly what she's doing. She'll come up to people and she'll sort of give them sideways and get low, and then sort of almost act shy until they go, oh, and then suddenly she's jumped up on them and she's trying to lick their face. And then the likes of Echo was born in COVID and he doesn't really like people, but you could
A bit
walk him
like
through a
myself.
crowd of people. You could walk him through a crowd of people and he wouldn't have any reaction unless somebody tried to touch him. And when somebody tried to touch him, that's when he's more likely to have a bad reaction. So he's fine being around people. He just doesn't want people trying to get too close to him, I suppose.
I'm sure we're getting all like that just now, man. So, what's a kind of day to day life for you at the minute? Because, I mean, you're creating content, you've got your wife, you've got the kids, you're going out to work every day. What's a standard day for you? Like, and do you have like habits that work for you, like to keep it all going, just to keep you smiling and just enjoying life like you seem to be doing?
Yeah, it's certainly it can be hard sometimes. You're really, really busy and farming can be quite stressful in itself. Um, and then me and my wife have just had Cole 9 months ago, so he's at a sort of good age to keep you on your toes. Uh, but yeah, a sort of typical day for me, head out in the morning with the dogs, do a stock check, do my work for the day, and then it really just depends on things like weather and stuff like that. I try and do a lot of my filming on the weekends, because that's generally when I've got most time. And yeah, it's just pretty much try to fit it in during day to day life. Sometimes if I've got 10 minutes on my stock check, I can make a video there. Um, Sort of for TikTok or Shorts or something like that, you can pretty easily make a quick video sometimes, and then other times you sort of feel like you're just trying to catch up on yourself constantly, try to catch up on recording, try to catch up on editing. Um, so I feel like it sort of comes and goes in waves. Sometimes you'll be like, oh, it's really easy to make videos right now. The videos are almost making themselves, and then other times you're almost trying to create content out of nothing and getting worried about, am I gonna have a video to upload next week? And um, yeah, it's I feel like it's just the normal sort of stresses of work life with a little bit of extra piled on top of it.
It's like nothing like taking on extra responsibility, is it? It's like taking on a full-time job on top of your full-time job and being a father as well. Bit insane, man.
Pretty
Uh,
much.
so how? Because I always like to say, if there's a right way and a wrong way, a sheep will make its own special way of doing it wrong. You know, you'll take them to an open gate, only way they can go, and it'll run and jump over a fence, or it'll try to run past you and break your leg, or it'll do something momentally stupid. What have you learned
What
about things going wrong and having to stay calm because you've kind of got to control the dogs, the bull that's in the field, the dealing with the cows, the machinery, and all the sort of things going on? What's it taught you about remaining calm?
I think the best way I can sort of explain it is something I sort of say to people about dogs. It's like, don't worry about making a mistake. It's just an opportunity to learn how to fix it. And
Love it.
when you're working with sheep all the time, you sort of come to expect the unexpected, because they will always find a new way to cause problems. To If there's a gap in the fence that's like a couple of inches wide, somehow a sheep will manage to get through that. When you're working with sheep, you just learn to get on with problems, really, because they're going to cause them. But another thing I sort of like to say to people is, um, the moment you think a sheep is stupid, you've been outsmarted, because they just they're so good at doing stupid things that it's actually impressive. And sometimes you almost feel like it's intentional. Because I've came to fields in the morning, you'll be like, you can see a lamb up there with its head stuck in the fence, and you drive up and you're about to pull it out, and the second you go to get off your bike and go to pull it out, it pulls its head out and looks at you like, got you. But
It's
yeah,
also,
I
and then
think it's just,
but the thing is, like, if you try getting through the fence, no, you turn your back and look another way, they run behind you like, ha, we'll show him. And you're kind of like, could
I,
you not have just done that in the first place?
sheep, I feel like sheep are just nature's antagonists sometimes. Like
That's
they're just there to annoy farmers. Um,
that
like
needs to be the tagline for this.
they're so inventive at finding ways to cause you a new stress. Like there's never a dull day with sheep. There's always something happening, or there's always something where I've seen sheep where they won't walk across a gate because there's a shadow on it, but they'll jump into a loch. But yeah, they're something else. But definitely when it comes to problems, I think you've just got to think of them as a way to solve them and a way to sort of maybe learn for next time how you could have done something a bit better. It's the only really thing you can do. If you get too sort of in your own head about what went wrong, then uh, it'll become a bigger thing. Really, sometimes you've just got to say, well, it went wrong. How do we fix that now? And how do we move on?
Because you probably kind of answered the next question I had was like, because you've worked through storms, blizzards, grief, injuries, some of the hardships of going out on a quad bike when you can barely feel your fingers anymore, and you've still got to do another couple of fields worth of work. How do you have you got like a mental reset? Is that what you think about? We just need to fix the thing and just get it done, and then I'll look back and try figure out how to do it better next time, like you mentioned. Or do you have a mantra that you say in your head? Like my mom used to always say, she plays the circus song, and just says, "Not my,
Right.
not my clowns, not my circus," and she just forgets about it and moves on. Do you have something similar?
Um, yeah, I suppose sometimes I've got that sort of it is what it is attitude. I think um, sometimes you've just got to accept that things go wrong and you've got to get on with it. You've got to sometimes just say to yourself, right, well, that didn't work. What are we going to try next? And, or like you say, sometimes you can be out in a storm and just thinking, God, what am I doing here? um,
Mm-hmm.
and you've just got to find a way to sort of build the motivation just to get on, get through it, get the work done, make sure the stock's okay, and um, go back and think, well, we could have planned this better, or we could have did this a bit better. And yeah, definitely, I feel like sometimes in farming you've got to have a bit of a is what it is sort of attitude and just get on with it.
I love that. And do you think that kind of drives your own instinct to want to do this? That the bond with the dogs, but you love it as much? Does the land, does working in the nature or the animals, does that open a part of you up that nothing else does? Do you think more men should be volunteering on farming to learn not just about hard work, but by learning from working with animals, working in nature?
Yeah, I feel I've always had like a big sort of affinity for animals and nature. I can't imagine myself doing an office kind of job. I think it's just not what I would, not the way my mind's set up, not the sort of path that I would like. Um, I've always been a more outdoorsy kind of person. Even when I was growing up, I was spent most of my time sort of like camping and fishing, and um, even at school, like when the other kids were like playing football, I was like trying to spot eagles and sort of being a bit more interested in animals than people, I suppose. And
Sounds
I
normal to
think,
me, man.
yeah, I think it's something that comes naturally to me, just being outdoors in nature, and it's where I feel a lot more at home. And I feel like maybe not everybody should be working on a farm, but I definitely think a lot more people could do with just getting out into nature and um, sort of understanding the natural world a bit better, and um, in a way, sort of maybe understanding what farming actually is and not what the media portrays as much, and understanding where your food comes from and how
Mm.
this circle of life works and just how nature works in general. I think a lot of people these days sort of almost have a rose tinted glasses effects when they think about nature and don't really realize that nature's sort of almost everything. It can be harsh, it can be beautiful, um, and just what sort of happens in nature is just some of it's just so amazing and so wild to think about. And I think a lot of people are very detached from sort of nature and farming, and they could really do with maybe just learning a bit more and maybe trying to understand a bit more of just generally how the world works.
Because I think that's something that could be said also about like the way the government approaches, like herding and animals and like animal welfare. And I'm sure you're probably sick, like my parents and that are, of the multiple forms you have to fill in and the spot checks and all these new regulations and things they bring out. What's your opinions on these sorts of things? Do you think it's crazy that somebody in a city can dictate how somebody in a rural landscape works with the animals? I mean, I know we've got the food safety rules and things like that, but how would you change the way we, raise animals if you had control?
I think it's a really difficult situation. One of the biggest things that I've always been sort of about in my farming career is good animal welfare.
Mm.
I've always, because I do have that affinity for animals, I've always sort of wanted to make sure that I'm doing things in a way that the animals are always going to be well looked after and stuff like that. And I feel like most farmers also feel that way. I think the paperwork side of farming does get a bit ridiculous sometimes. um, and the sort of control that the government has on farming these days. But I think the biggest issue is governmental sort of blanket policies. So because this works here, they want to roll it out over, say, the whole UK. When actually every farm's different. A farm 10 miles down the road from me will be completely different from this farm. It'll have different types of soil, different types of land. Um, it's just every farm can be so unique, and they need to move away from blanket policies and really start treating farms like individual farms and looking at, well, maybe that works here, but 5 miles down the road, maybe we need to look at something different and really listen to farmers as individuals instead of trying to roll out nationwide blanket policies on how farming works, because it's only ever going to cater to a very small amount of farmers, and it tends to leave the vast majority out in the sort of lurch, or um, sort of limits what they can do with their farm.
Very good points. I mean, I've seen like 5 or 6 forms getting filled in to move sheep down an hour down the road. And I think there's that thing of what a lot of people assume animals are herding is and farming and what it actually is. And farmers do not get the credit that they deserve for the amazing work that they do. And even when you look at like how much money dairy farmers and all these kind of things are making off like these kind of contracts, they're getting robbed in a way, and it's frustrating to see, especially when they're such amazing, nice people, and to see how they get screwed a lot of times. It's heartbreaking. But another thing that was
Yeah,
heartbreaking. Oh, sorry.
another sort of thing which I think is almost created out of the way the industries went is there's almost this sort of quantity over quality sort of thing where farmers, it's so hard to make money at farming. Like the profit margin is so small that it almost sort of makes it so that farmers have to produce as much as possible. I think if actually we rewarded farmers for good animal welfare, for having a good sort of product over just producing quantity, what you would actually see is a lot of farmers would actually want to downsize. They would want to do less work, which means they would spend more time with each animal. Each animal would get a better life. Instead of this, sort of like you said with dairy farmers, they get like, when you actually work out what they get per liter profit margin, it's minuscule. It's like point something pence per liter. And so what that really does, that pushes dairy farmers to have as much stock as possible, to be overstocked, so that they can get as many liters as they can into the tank just to make a profit. Where I think we need to look at rewarding farmers better, and that would actually end
Hmm.
up improving animal welfare. It would make farmers want to maybe not hold too much stock, hold a bit less stock, and then that would go on to help the environment as well. So I think it would solve a lot of problems trying to get out of this sort of, um, I don't know what you'd almost call it, sort of consumerism farming, where it almost promotes bigger farms and factory farms over family farms.
Yeah, we always seem to think more is better, don't we, rather than the quality. I mean, I know the RSPCA freedom foods and things like that are definitely a step in the right way, but when you surround it in bureaucracy and red tape, are you winning?
Yeah,
It definitely needs looked at. I mean, I think the hardest thing about working animals and livestock and things like that is they have a short life compared to us, but they make such an
yeah,
amazing big impact. I grew up with a dog called Mist, who was my best friend, and I miss her. Like it's been over 15 something odd years, and it's the best dog ever. And I can think of every single little thing we used to do and our little nuances and stuff. I mean, you recently had a sad passing of Monty. How
yeah,
do you get through that when they're not just a pet, they're part of your life, work, your whole sort of sense of being almost? Have you any
yeah.
advice for
Um,
dealing with that?
each dog's different, and I mean, with Monty, he was more sort of a pet, and it was really hard because he was the sort of first dog that me and my wife had got together. Like we rescued him, be almost it would almost be 9 years, um, and when I was a contract shepherd before I was here, so we moved around a lot, and he moved around with us, and he's always lived in the house with us. So it's always hard when you lose a pet, but certainly with Monty, him being he was almost 16, so
It's a good innings.
he was a bit older, and we sort of knew it was coming for a while, and that sort of made us prepare for it a bit, but you never fully prepare for it, and you always miss each dog differently, I think. And if you compare that with Haig was 5 and he just collapsed one day, and that was a total shock. And um, yeah, that he was a working dog, and that was just something else completely because he was so young. But I don't think there is anything that can really prepare you for it, or help you get over it. You just have to grieve, I suppose, and
Mm.
try and remember the good memories, and try and remember that you've given them a good life. And it's unfortunately just the way it is that dogs don't live as long as us. And I think the best thing you can do is just sort of remember all the good times, sort of remember all the fun you had with them, and always try and do the right thing while they're there. And when they end up leaving, sort of try and take comfort in that in some way. But you're still going to have to grieve. It's still one of the hardest things you'll do. And for
Mhm.
most people, you go get another dog and you do it all again.
I think that's beautifully put. I mean, it's that horrible moment of when you realize they are having a short lifespan, and it's the impact they make. And I always say to people, there's no such thing as a bad dog; it's a bad owner. They become part of the family.
Aye,
They become part of you. They shape your story. There's that story about the parents that are trying to explain a death of a dog to their little kid, and about them dying young. And she said, "Oh, I know why they die young. It's because they give love so freely and fully that they give it all that they need to, so they can leave earlier." And I just thought that was so beautiful
yeah,
that we hold back in life where dogs just live and be part of, they just live every day like they want to. And I think if we if
yeah.
we all did more like a dog. So what has this all taught you? The whole content, the brand, the farming. How do you think you've changed by being working with animals? Because you said before, you weren't as confident at school, but now you're very articulate, you're very happy, you're outgoing. You see your personality in your videos. You're now a
Um,
father. How's it changed you?
I think in a way, it's kind of just teaches you just to be yourself. You're always going to be happiest being yourself, I think, and doing what you want to do. I think working with animals, you sort of almost, when you've been working with them long enough, you learn to sort of be honest with them and yourself,
Mm.
because at the end of the day, animals aren't going to judge you. My dogs aren't going to make fun of me for making silly videos in front of them. So yeah, I guess they sort of teach you that it's okay to be just yourself, and maybe be a bit silly sometimes, and not really worry as much what the everybody else is going to think. And I think once you sort of learn to do that, a lot of people actually respond well to it. And working with animals, you definitely learn to have a sort of compassion for them, but you also sort of learn to take a lot of things on the chin. You sort of learn just to get on with things, that not everything's going to go your way, so you might as well just get on with it and make the best of what you got.
I love it. I mean, how often do you think about your legacy and what you want to leave as a man, as a father, as a husband? What would you say to the wee man if if they came along and said, "Dad, I want to be taking over. I want to take the next generation of Storm, Echo, and Kate out." What would you want them to remember, or learn from being a crofter, etc.?
Um, I think the most important thing would be to make sure that they're doing it because they actually wanted to do it and not just because I did it. I think when it comes to definitely farming and stuff like that, it's something that you're always going to be better at it if you've actually got a passion for it. I think the biggest thing that I'd like Colt just sort of know is just to be himself, do what he wants to do in life. With me not coming from a farming background, I sort of think I sort of forged my own way in life, and that's probably the reason why I do feel as happy in myself as I do now is because I've went and did what I wanted to do, and that's definitely the message I would want to pass down to him is don't worry about what other people think. You just do what feels right to you and what you want to do and what you feel your calling in life is, and you'll be fine.
I love that. I love that you can put that kind of message out because we always think of crofters as these like rugged, like guy who sits in the corner, barely speaks unless he's we got his dog. You know, but you can be emotional in your videos. You can be funny. You can be outgoing. You can be serious in your videos. You can explain, you know, like quite like emotional or advanced topics and explain to somebody
Yeah,
how to train dogs. And I think that's the beauty of your channel is you're like the mate in the pub. You would sit and talk to everybody saying me on and off the camera, which I can attest to just now. What does success mean to you? You know, what is your end goal for this? What would you want people to remember you by?
um, I suppose I would just want people to have sort of maybe a closer relationship with farming, maybe a better understanding what actual farming is and not just what's portrayed in the media, and sort of realize that most of us farmers are just normal people like everybody else who just want to do what we like to do and get on with things, and that we're not all, well, these terrible people who want to exploit things, but actually
Mm,
most farmers are actually just nice everyday people who actually genuinely care about their animals.
yeah, and some of the best
And
people around. And I think
yeah,
that, I mean, you're a prime example of somebody who showcases the best part of farming. You know, you showcase somebody that works well with dogs, that is a leader, but doesn't shout and doesn't hit the dogs and is actually gives them the best life they have. And you showcase the amazing side of that life to your audience. You should be super proud of the work that you do. You know, to be doing that and raising a family and try a herd and try a harvest, you know, it's just phenomenal. I get tired just thinking about it nowadays. But how do you keep
I
yourself?
suppose
Oh, sorry.
I suppose another thing that I would sort of want to showcase to people is almost to show other farmers that it's okay to engage with people. I think especially with farming, be less and less young people being in farming, there's definitely this sort of uh, stigma in farming where a lot of the older generation sort of don't want to engage with the general public. They feel like there's this divide,
Hmm.
and I would like to show people that it is okay to sort of bridge that divide and try and let the general public in, and that they're not gonna react badly if you do sort of let them in.
It's very true. It's right to encourage like letting down the divide between them. You know, it's showcasing people that is an amazing thing, but it's better to understand where food comes from and to see how the other side works as much as city dwelling. Because rural life, it's the only time I probably feel the true happiness out in the croft. Maybe
Yeah,
not the time I was hungover having to watch a sheep lamb in a hill when it's pouring rain. Those kind of days
yeah.
I can forget about. But how do you stay? What do you do away from this? Like when you're trying to just be
Um,
Sean, do you have hobbies outside of this? Do you have time for hobbies?
yeah, I like fishing. I used to play rugby. I don't really do it anymore, but I do still watch it. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah, I like to go fishing, and that's a pretty good way to relax. It's quiet. Um, there's generally nothing to do but sit there, which is quite a nice change of pace.
And just have
and
your own
waiting something
time.
happening.
You're
Aye,
not
uh,
dealing with an
sit in the,
erratic sheep or a cow or whatever.
aye, just stand at the side of the loch and enjoy the peace. Really.
And what's your funniest moments with can you think of something where you've just belly laughed, where it's been something so stupid or so bizarre that it's almost like you had to be there moment?
Um, I suppose some of the bloopers that had never made it in, and some of the times that I've misspoke, or um, there's one time I can remember. This was quite a while ago, but I was making a video and Storm farted in the background of it, and you could hear it in the editing, and I can just remember just absolutely ending myself, just rolling around on the floor listening to the fart noise over and over in
That
my
is
headphones.
that is impressive. If it's that loud, you can hear it. See, that's the kind of video I think I would love to see as well. All these like the little things, because we see a lot of the good stuff, but I think also sometimes people want to see the time the dog ran the wrong way or went like did something that sounds stupid because we want. I think people bond with the dog so much because they see you through the channel, and I love that you've got that they become their own little heroes of the story as well. But
Yeah,
I feel like I could talk to you for hours yet, but I know we're over our limit. So, what do you
no,
want?
you're all right.
What's the best thing then that you find from this? Like, what's the future for Sean, the sheepman? Are you going to look to take this further? Are you going to be like doing tours? Are you going to be taking people on? Are you going to be coaching? What's the next step in this global franchise you're building?
I suppose I'm not really sure. Part of it's just to keep going, keep showcasing dogs and things like that. Like I say, I think if you're driven to do something, you generally want to do it for yourself one day. So maybe start my own farm and do tours and things like that, and actually introduce people to animals in person rather than just through a screen one day.
Hmm.
And yeah, sort of just try it out for myself at some point, being fully in control and the man in charge, I suppose.
I think you're ready to that, and I think you're well on your way to doing that. So, what would you want people to remember or to take from this as a sort of a summary or a follow up? Maybe a mission to do or a thought to remember from this.
Maybe just to get out there into nature and try and learn a bit more about the countryside, learn a bit more about nature, and learn a bit more about animals and their own dogs. Try and don't know, connect yourself with your own dog and understand it a little bit better.
And how can we follow along on this journey? Because I think you're just getting started and you're going to go major places. We want to follow along the journey of the dogs as well. But for those who want to find out more about you, to connect with you, etc., even just to buy the dogs some treats and stuff, how can they get in touch or how can they follow along the journey?
So, we do a lot of content just on mainly YouTube now. We do a lot of longer form videos. Uh, we also still do a lot of content on TikTok and Facebook, and we've got a lot of things coming up on Facebook. So we're going to be doing a lot more stuff on there to sort of engage with people, get their opinions. So we've got that coming up soon, and with the YouTube, you can follow along. It's like almost like vlog style stuff. And if people want to get in contact, they generally just get in contact with us on Instagram or uh, through our email.
Well, that's it for another week, and thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.